Check, check, check. Okay. And I'll start sharing the presentation. Check. Oh, perfect. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. We hope you had a good night's sleep and ready for the second day of the conference. After the plenary talk, we're all going to go back to the Harmony building for the day full of interesting talks. And we also have 3 symposia today, 3 colloquia, sorry. A housekeeping about lunch. We have reorganized it a little bit. So we're going to have some drinks with lunch today. But please keep in mind that in the Netherlands, we have beautiful water. Yeah, so feel free to tap your water bottles anywhere, from the taps. And after this afternoon plenary, those of you who are going for dinner, we will gather in this building and go all together. Yeah, but there will be another announcement about dinner later on. And first, let me welcome Eugene Kim, who will introduce the first plenary speaker for today.
Hello, can you hear me well? Yeah? Okay, great. Good morning, everybody. My name is Eugene Kim from Georgia State University in the United States. It is my absolute pleasure to introduce our next plenary speaker, Dr. Naoko Taguchi, Professor of Applied Linguistics at Northern Arizona University. Now, when you hear her name, what's the first word that comes to your mind? Pragmatic. Very good, right? So she's the powerhouse in the field of L2 pragmatics. Dr. Taguchi currently serves as editor for not just one journal, but 2, Language Learning, one of those small-scale journals, and Applied Pragmatics. But she's not just an academic rock star. She's a rock star in the mountain. So she's literally a rock climber and trail runner, hardcore mountain lover. And she has climbed various types of rocks, sandstone, limestone, you can name it. Okay, so back to business. Dr. Taguchi's research focuses on L2 pragmatics, technology-enhanced language learning, and intercultural communication. She has published 9 books, over 100 journal articles, and 30 book chapters. And while those numbers are really impressive, they don't fully capture her impact on the field of second language pragmatics. Her contributions to second language pragmatics go far beyond quantity. She has introduced innovative ways to conceptualize and investigate instructed L2 pragmatics, pushing the field forward through both foundational survey work and rigorous empirical research. Her co-authored book entitled Second Language Pragmatics has become a go-to resource for anyone who is interested in L2 pragmatics. About a decade ago, she and I became collaborating on bridging TBLT and L2 pragmatics, and our work on task-based approaches to teaching and assessing pragmatics has sparked a lot of interest in using tasks to teach pragmatics. Today, Dr. Taguchi will share a very timely and exciting talk exploring the potential and challenges of using high immersion virtual reality in pedagogic task development. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Dr. Taguchi today.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Great. Well, thank you, Eugene, for your very thoughtful introduction. And Eugene is a person who brought TBLT to my career and research and everything. And I'm very grateful for her long-term friendship, collaboration, and inspiration and opportunities she shared with me over the last 10 years or so. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, it's okay.
Is it
This is this, how about now? Maybe I can hold it like that. Yeah, great. Yes. So I feel extremely honored to be invited to speak at the International TBLT conference. And I'd like to thank the organizing committee for inviting me and also putting together this wonderful program under Maria's leadership. And my personal thanks to go to Irina. She's been my caretaker for the last few days. And so she came to pick me up in the Amsterdam airport all the way at 10 p.m. When my flight was delayed for 7 hours. And she also let me borrow her winter jacket, which I didn't bring this time. So I feel sorry for being such a high maintenance guest. I didn't mean to, but I turned to be the one. And I'm very thankful for her help and the support. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, so my talk today focuses on immersive virtual reality. And I will talk about how this technology can leverage the current practice of TBLT. And I was very excited to see at least 6 presentations on VR and TBLT featured in this program. And many of them are scheduled later today after my talk. So I look forward to visiting some of the presentations and learning what's going on with TBLT and VR. So this talk is grounded on the intersection between TBLT and the core, which has been advocated by a number of scholars over the last 20 years. And the most recent one I saw yesterday, it's a meta-analysis presented by the Georgetown group. And this intersection is based on the mutual benefits and the complementary roles these fields play for each other. So for the TBLT community, integrating technology into the task design can help develop meaning-focused and authentic tasks. On the other hand, for the core people, having a TBLT as a framework helps them to push forward more theoretically oriented research in investigating the benefits of technology for language learning. So these fields together gave rise to this term, technology-mediated TBLT, and they have specific pedagogical principles and task design principles. So my talk today intends to advocate this technology-mediated TBLT from the point of virtual reality. And this is an outline of my talk. In the first part, I will talk about the general characteristics and trends of immersive VR. So I will talk about what's immersive VR and how people use it. And in the second part, I will talk about recent studies, empirical findings in the VR-assisted language learning. And then I will go to the last section, which is my own study, example study of VR-assisted TBLT. So let's start with the first part, immersive VR trends and characteristics. So these are the pictures from the VR lab we have at Northern Arizona University, and it's part of the School of Communication, and they call it Advanced Media Lab. So I've been in collaboration with the team in the VR lab, and I did a couple of projects with them. So what is immersive VR? So immersive VR basically provides you immersive experience using specific device and platforms and so on. And there are different terms like cyberspace, or artificial reality, XR, extended reality. So these are all part of this immersive VR. Okay? And the device varies. And so common devices include the smartphones and the computer desktop and the HMD, head-mounted display, as you can see in these pictures. And they differ, the price are different. On the expensive side, we have this Apple Vision Pro, which is over 3,000 US dollars. And this is a device you don't need hand controllers, so you can use fingertips to move things around. But more commonly, headset comes with these hand controllers. So this is a Meta Quest 3, which is currently widely in use. And this has a XR, extended reality function. But in more economical side, we have this cardboard, and maybe some of you might have used it, but this is, you can put on the cell phone and have a 360-degree view of the sceneries, and it's only $10 or so. And in the future, these smart glasses are probably going to replace these bulky VR headsets. So this is easy. You can put on, take off easily. And Ray-Ban currently is selling these smart glasses with augmented reality, AR, and combined with AI functions. And there are two types of VR, high immersion and low immersion. So these are both immersive VR, but they are different in terms of the degree of immersiveness. So low immersion VR provides immersive experience through the two-dimensional computer desktop, and has a audio equipment combined. High immersion VR uses this HMD head-mounted display and gives you the three-dimensional 360-degree of the view. So this is a bit of information about the VR hardware. So let's move on to the VR software or use of VR. So there are many different use people have implemented, but the most common use, as you can guess, is video games. So video games doubled, tripled market size of VR for the last 10 years or so. But VR use is not just limited to the video game. So we have these 360-degree videos, like a YouTube VR. And we have this app like a Wonder. So you have a view of the sceneries, but you can actually explore the space by walking around and moving things. Okay? And with an app like Cities, you can create your own city in the virtual reality space. And other common use includes simulations and role play practice. And many of the role plays currently use scripted dialogue with multiple choice as a response options. But with the rise of AI recently, we can have more free-flowing creative conversations with AI chatbot in the virtual space. And if you want to have more naturalistic conversations, we have this app called the social VR apps. So these apps are something you can download directly into your headset, and most of them are free, and there are lots of locations. And so you pick a place, create your avatar, and put on your headset, and go into the place, which is already populated with other users. And so you interact with other users using a hand controller and voice chat and text chat. And so this is one example of the space called the campground, which I often visited when I was designing my own VR study. So these are some common use of VR, but the question is VR for language learning. So we have tons of literature in this area, and they are advocating some unique affordances of virtual reality, which can be beneficial for language learning. One affordance is immersion and sense of presence. So you are immersed into the sensory rich environment. So you naturally develop this feeling of being there or, oh, being part of the environment. Okay, all right. So yes, so sense of presence. So this feeling of being there essentially enhance authenticity and the contextualized language practice. So VR can give simulations of real life experience. And another affordance is embodied learning. So when you situate your avatars in the virtual reality environment, various parts of the body get stimulated. So the connection among body, mind, and thinking is considered to promote learning. Autonomy is another affordance. So in the virtual space, learners have control of their own experience and action. So they decide how long to stay in one certain place, or where to go next, and or who to talk to. So these series of decision-making capacities can promote agency and also independent learning. And finally, interaction. So interaction in the virtual space is not limited to person-to-person or user-to-user interaction. Interaction involves interacting with the environment and the space. So those artifacts and objects placed in the virtual space, you can touch them, manipulate them, pick them up. So that adds to the whole interaction experience. So these are the affordances of VR. And now I want to think about these affordances in relation to the principles of the TBLT. And because I want to see how those affordances align with TBLT practice and the principles. So as just a quick practice review, I want to look at some of those principles, which you are already familiar with, but this is just a review. So one principle is experiential learning. So the concept of learning by doing. And so the language acquisition is considered to happen as a byproduct of using language while completing the task. And authenticity. So what the learners do during the task has relevance to the real life activities. And so that's authentic and realistic. And because of this, the tasks focus on meaning rather than isolated linguistic forms. And goal orientation. Tasks are designed to achieve real life goals rather than just a display of linguistics knowledge and skills. So for the rest of my talk, I want to think about these affordances in relation to the TBLT principles to critically discuss this potential of VR-mediated TBLT. And so I will start with current literature in VR-assisted language learning and how they can promote the current TBLT practice. So this part is based on the synthesis review I recently conducted with my student at Northern Arizona University, and the paper is currently in press. So in this synthesis, we asked the two research questions. And the first question was more like a scoping review type of questions. So we wanted to see the characteristics of the literature using VR for language learning and teaching. And second question is more related to the TBLT. And so we analyzed the tasks used in those VR studies and coded them according to the task characteristics in TBLT. And so we wanted to see to what extent the current VR tasks are task-based according to the TBLT framework. So to answer these questions, we conducted a systematic literature review with literature search using a database, LLBA, ERIC, and PsychoInfo with broad keyword of second language and virtual reality. And we focused on the peer-reviewed articles, research articles published in the journals and written in English. So this process came out 183 studies altogether up to September last year when we were finishing up this paper. And we didn't set a time frame, but the earliest study we found was 2014. Okay? And these studies were coded according to these coding criteria. And the number 3, the learning outcomes documented was the most important one for this synthesis, because we had several meta-analysis and the synthesis reviews appeared in the last couple of years. But those studies found that the most studies, majority, 50%, 60% of the studies focused on learner perceptions, looking at the learner's affective factors like anxiety or interest, motivation using VR. So we intentionally excluded those studies and looked at the studies purely focusing on linguistics knowledge and skills as learning outcomes. So by applying these criteria, we found a total of 33 studies, which were coded for study characteristics and the task characteristics. So I want to show some major trends found in this synthesis, and with the interest of time, I will survey just a few major trends or characteristics. So this is a finding about the publication date. And you can see that the most studies were published in the last 4 years or so. And so we can clearly see that the more researchers started looking at the linguistics knowledge and the skills as learning outcomes, rather than just the perceptions of learners' VR use. Participant population, so this trend follows the general trends of SLA research using a convenient sampling and focusing on university level learners. So you see the same trends with VR studies here. And in terms of the VR types used for the hardware, majority, I should say most studies used high immersion VR, HMV, and only 5 studies used low immersion, desktop computer. So this is a new trend in this study was synthesis, because previous studies, they found most studies using low immersion VR. So PARMAX's synthesis 2023, looking at the studies published until 2018, found actually no studies using high immersion. So we can see that with accessibility and the availability, affordability of HMD, researchers and teachers started using high immersion VR. And in terms of training of these VRs, 25 out of 33 studies it said that in the paper they gave training, but the content and details of the training were not so transparent. And only 3 studies out of 33 reported the lengths of training ranging from 20 minutes to 90 minutes. And for VR software, so we have studies using 360-degree videos, VR game, educational VR. So we have those apps like Immerse Me, Monterey, which are designed to teach language. So researchers are using those apps. And social VR apps are still small in number, only 3 studies out of 33 studies. Target language, not surprisingly, English is number 1, followed by Chinese, targeted in 5 studies. And other languages are very small in number, only 1 language in each group. Target knowledge and skill areas, vocabulary is number 1, followed by 4 skill areas like speaking, writing, and listening. And the popularity of the vocabulary as a target is also similar in other synthesis reviews and the meta-analysis. And other studies, like other areas like my area, pragmatics was completely absent in those VR studies. And in terms of the sessions, most studies did just 1 session. And the length, 20 minutes, 1 session was the shortest one. But the longest one, we saw a semester length study, like 10 VR sessions over semester. So that was the longest one. Okay, so now I'm moving to the VR task characteristics. So to what extent current VR studies are task-based. So just to clarify, these studies we found, they were not framed as TBLT studies. So none of them were TBLT studies. So I wanted to see how those tasks align with TBLT principles by coding. So we coded those tasks, total of 39 tasks, because some studies used more than one task, according to these 3 defining characteristics established in the current TBLT literature. So focus on meaning, authenticity, or relevance to the real-life situations, and non-linguistic outcomes. So tasks are designed to achieve real-life goals rather than display of linguistic knowledge. And 2 coders coded the tasks with an agreement rate of 92%. And these are the findings. So we found that the first 2 characteristics, focus on meaning and authenticity, were well represented in the current VR tasks. 80% of the tasks had a focus on meaning characteristic, and 60% of the tasks had authenticity. And I think it's because these characteristics are part of or integral to those VR affordances. So those affordances like immersion and the sense of presence, 3-dimensional view, embodiment, and multimodal input. So these are part of VR. Okay? And so they naturally lead to those simulation, meaning-focused, contextualized language practice. And it's almost strange to see focus on form type exercise using VR. And we did find those studies, like doing word reorder or sentence construction tasks using a virtual space, which has nothing to do with the sentence itself. And it's almost, yeah, it's really strange. And we found, why do you use VR doing such kind of exercise? But however, the last characteristic, non-linguistic outcome, was underrepresented. Only 40% of the tasks had these characteristics. So again, I think this is because this characteristic is not integral or part of the VR affordances. So for VR tasks to qualify as tasks under TBLT framework, teachers and researchers have to attend to these characteristics consciously and implement it at the task design stage. So this essentially support the claim made by Brian Smith and Marta Gonzalez-Riolet about technology-mediated TBLT. So we really need to look into the affordances of a specific technology to see if those affordances can support or not support TBLT principles. So some characteristics are naturally transferable to TBLT, like focus on meaning and authenticity, but other characteristics like non-linguistic outcome is not transferable automatically. So it's important for us to critically look at the affordances and how we can sort of promote TBLT by using those affordances, and how can we complement VR tasks so they align more closely with TBLT principles. So this leads to the last part of my talk. So I will continue talking about this connection between VR affordances and TBLT principles. And I'm using my own study. And so this is a point to kind of criticize this study from TBLT and VR perspectives. So we did this study, but after analyzing the data, we found lots of limitations. And so if we were do this research again, I think there are other things we can explore in the future research. Yeah. So this study, we used a social app called Alt Space, which was available up to 2023. And so we are lucky that 1 week after we completed the data collection, this app shut down. And they don't give us any warning. They just shut down. Right? And so we are just lucky. Anyway, so this app is not available, but there are some other similar apps like Horizon World and Rec Room you can use for the similar the study. And so this is just one example. So social VR app, as I mentioned previously, so they provide those worlds of space, which can be customized freely by users. And so those space like campground, museum, or concert halls. And so they pick a place and create their own avatars, put on the headset and go into the space and explore the space using a hand controllers and headset and interact with people using voice and text chat. The primary goal of social VR is to meet and talk to people while participating in shared activities. So while listening to the music together or looking at the art together, they get to know each other and chat and then talk and socialize. So interaction is a built-in characteristics of social VR. And so there is a task essentialness when we talk about the interaction using the social VR. So these are the research questions. And so first question, we basically wanted to see the potential with this social VR for improving students' interactional competence in L2 Spanish as they participate in this task using social VR. And second research question, we wanted to see students' perception if those tasks are perceived meaning focused and authentic. Participants were 26 learners of Spanish. They were all beginning level learners enrolled in the second semester Spanish course. And they completed 4 social VR sessions in a group of 5 to 10 members. So mostly learners, but there were a couple of native speakers playing a different role in each session. And so 20 minutes per session, twice a week, over 2 weeks, so total of 4 sessions. And these are the avatars they had, and they had their own avatar name. And after completing these sessions, they filled out a survey. This is a survey assessing sense of presence. So this is for the authenticity part. And they also completed a focus group interviews. And so VR sessions provided task performance data, and the survey interviews provided task perception data. So VR setting was a customized space, and this was a reason why we used the Alt space, because it allows easy customization using the game engine Unity. So we set up the setting as a university in Mexico. And the students, learners were situated as international students coming from US universities, participating in a study abroad program. And they were at the party organized in the university. And so this was one of the task prompts. We created 2 prompts and alternated the use. So they were at the welcome party, interacting with people they met for the first time. And the goal was to get to know as many people as they can within the time limit of 20 minutes. And after they finished, they filled out the name of the people they interacted with, along with any details they remember about the person. And we created 2 space and used it over 4 sessions. And the students' avatars and avatar names were different each time to give them a sense of talking to a new person each time. So task performance, so we extracted conversations from the first VR session and the last VR session systematically according to the set criteria, and evaluated them to see if there are any change over time. For evaluation, we used a rubric, 4-point rubric, assessing these 3 areas of interactional competence based on the Sujun Yoon's work. Engagement, we looked at the students' level of engagement and the active involvement in the conversation. So we looked at the turn taking, their manner of common ground building, empathy expression, and perspective sharing, and also their ability to provide follow-up comments and follow-up questions. Content delivery focused more on the language aspect. So their use of grammar, vocabulary, we looked at them. And appropriateness was for pragmatics dimension. So we looked at the students' use of language and tone, if they were appropriate for the situation of talking to somebody for the first time. And two raters, Spanish speakers rated all the samples, 52 samples, leading to a kappa agreement rate of 0.83. Task perception, we had two data sets, and one is from a survey, and this is called the multimodal presence scale survey, used for the VR studies mostly. And this included 15 items, 5-point Likert scale, and you see some sample items here. Interview was 20 minutes group interviews. And for this interview, we wanted the students to compare the same task done in the virtual reality setting and also face-to-face setting. So after they completed the last VR session, they were gathered in a large room and they did the same task in the face-to-face mode for 15 minutes. And after that, we asked them questions about their impressions about the tasks, face-to-face and the VR mode, and the pros and the cons of each mode. Interviews were transcribed and analyzed thematically using Max CUDA. So first, we identified the semantic segments. So the segment expressing the same ideas and put the label or code for each segment. And the coded segments were merged together to identify themes, and the frequency of themes were counted to see which themes are most salient in the interview data. So I will move to the results, but this is really simple, embarrassingly simple, but basically students improved in all three areas. Okay. And the engagement showed the largest increase over time. And it was shown in the length of the conversation students were able to sustain. In the first VR session, average length was about 4.4 minutes. But in the last VR session, average length was 5.8 minutes. So they increased length of the conversation over time. So this scale, was helpful, helped us to see the interactional competence over time and its development. But after we looked at the actual data we recorded in the VR sessions, we realized that we were not able to assess interaction specific to the virtual space, which is interaction with the space and the environment, artifacts and objects. It did happen with a few participants in few occasions, not all of them. So there was quite an individual difference, but I think it's an indication of the interactional competence as well. So I want to show a sample video from a participant BW from the last VR session. So in this session, it was a basketball club meeting, welcome party. And so there was a basketball court and rink as a part of the environment. And you will see this participant, how he interacted with the space to facilitate his communication with his partner. So I will play this video. The whole conversation was 5 minutes, but I skip over the middle part. And so you will see the beginning and fast forward the middle section and the ending part. And the sound, unfortunately, is not perfect because we recorded using students' headset. And so it picked up the sound around them. But I hope you get some idea what's going on in the virtual space interaction. So let's take a look.
Hola. ¿Tienes una familia?
¿Quieres?
Mucho gusto.
¿Qué?
¿Qué te gusta hacer en tu tiempo libre?
¿Y qué cocinas?
Oh, lo siento. Yo me gusta cocinar.
Me gusta
¿Cómo se llama?
películas.
Me llamo Kaya, ¿y tú?
Okay.
Me llamo Juan.
Cuando caminas
Mucho gusto, Juan.
caminas con
Mucho
familia o
¿Qué te gusta
mascotas
hacer?
o amigos.
Ah, yo hago leer libros y ver películas.
¿Y
Oh, sí.
tu novio y
Hola.
qué?
Oh, muy bien.
Oh,
¿Tienes
¿tu tarea?
mascotas?
Sí. Tengo en Missouri con mis padres. Tengo
Posgrado.
un perro, se llama Brownie, es un chihuahua,
Sí.
Muy bonita.
muy enojado. Oh.
2 años después, está
Y
bien.
una
¿Y
perra
qué piensas
se
que
llama
quieres hacer
Sugar,
con
es
con
un
tu tarea?
pitbull.
Oh.
Y un pez se llama Fish,
Oh,
pero que sí.
¿con niños?
Y
Muy bien.
una ave se llama Audrey.
Oh, ok. Sí, te entiendo. Pero está bien porque es viejo también. ¿Y tienes hermanos?
¿Cómo se llama?
Kaya.
¿Eres estudiante?
¿Y tú?
Kaya.
Kaya.
Oh, ok.
Juan.
Muy bien.
¿Y él va al
Adiós.
colegio o todavía no?
Adiós.
No, él trabajó en
Okay. So I hope you saw lots of interaction with the space and the objects and the artifacts. And so he actually picked up the ball and approached the person standing in the basketball court. So there was only one person, but he spotted her, picked up the ball and approached her, said, "Do you want this?" And he threw the ball. Right? So that was a conversation starter. And I thought it's very creative that he was using these artifacts, basketball, to start a conversation and initiate a conversation. And during the conversation, he was there playing basketball. But amazingly, the content of the conversation you heard, they're very much task focused and goal oriented, which was getting to know as a person. So they were talking about the pets and their hometown names and other things. So they were task-oriented. So the basketball was a kind of a way to facilitate their conversation. And at the end, you saw them confirming their name and then said adios and goodbye. So this kind of interaction, we couldn't analyze, we couldn't evaluate. And so this was one of the questions I was actually wanted to ask the TBLT community. Is this kind of interaction, task-based interaction? Because when we talk about the interaction, yeah, face-to-face is a major one, but interaction with a space and the object, that's also interaction according to VR affordances. So how do we look at that? How do we analyze that as part of a task-based interaction? I think that's a future agenda, which I will come back at the end of this talk. Anyway, so we will move on. So we have a task survey data. And so these are the descriptive statistics. So mean rating of the sense of presence was 4.06 out of 5 points. On the 5-point scale. So generally, students had a high sense of presence, of feeling of being there. But when we looked at the type of presence, we found different findings. Okay. So we assessed the physical presence and the social presence. And the overall, physical presence had a higher rating than social presence. And the gap between these two types of presence was actually very surprising. Example item, I felt that I interacted with people directly in the virtual space. Mean rating pretty high, 4.27. I was able to look around and observe things in the VR environment. Again, mean rating was pretty high. But the social presence mean rating goes down. So for example, being in the virtual environment was an emotional experience, mean of about 3 points. And I felt emotionally influenced by what was happening in the VR environment, the same mean of 3.19. So overall, students developed the feeling of interacting with the physical place directly, but they were not able to develop emotional connection with people in the virtual space and other users. And interview data actually helped us to see why they couldn't develop this social connection with people. So interview, we found a total of 99 semantic segments, which we coded, and the segments with similar codes were merged together. And at the end, we had these 5 different themes, which are ranked in the order of frequency. So reduce the pressure to communicate. So this was the most salient one. We found a total of 38 mentions coming from 19 different participants. So this is about the hidden identity. So hiding behind the avatars reduces their pressure and the anxiety to communicate. So students often said that when they made mistakes, they felt it's not them who are making a mistake. It's somebody else, avatars making mistakes. So they were able to speak more freely without the fear of making a mistake and losing a face. So this is one participant response. If you are anonymous and in a VR space, if you make a mistake, it's not going to stick with you because your avatar changes every time. Okay. And another theme was technological difficulty, and it's inevitable using VR. Equipment breaks down sometimes, and we had to troubleshoot. And it's sometimes uncomfortable to use those VR headset, and it came up in the interview. Increased ability to communicate was another theme, and it's similar to reduced pressure to communicate. But the students mentioned that it's easier to communicate in the VR space because they can repeat same sequence over different physical locations and practice same expressions with different people, leading to increased ability to communicate. Perceived sense of presence was another theme. And this was interesting because students reported that they felt the environment is realistic and authentic and real life-like. But they also said it's a video game-like reality. And so this is one comment. It felt like so real, but at the same time, it was all animated. So it was real life, but it was virtual reality at the same time. The spatial scenes, the couch, the TV, the food displayed, it just seemed very real, but in an animated video game kind of way. So this population, they grew up playing video game, and maybe, I'm kind of assuming, but so video game is part of their real life. But they also distinguish the video game real life from real life. And so this made me think, what is really authenticity when it comes to the video game or virtual reality? And the last theme was inhibited ability to communicate. So this was small in number, but emerged as a theme. And so basically, as you saw in the videos, the avatars have limited social cues, facial expressions limited eye contact and gestures. So students felt that they couldn't really express themselves fully because using these avatars. And this is one comment. There is no facial expressions in VR. So it's just like talking to a wall, kind of, just like looking into the pit of their eyes. And so this really tells us why they couldn't develop emotional connections in the virtual space. So I want to conclude my talk with a summary of opportunities and the challenges of VR-mediated TBLT. So as we saw in this data, the goal-oriented tasks in a social VR space can generate opportunities for sustained conversation practice leading to interactional development. So there were a series of those repetitions or conversation cycles. Students had to find somebody to talk to, approach the person, start the conversation, sustain the conversation, and end the conversation at the right timing, and move to the other person and start all over again. So there were lots of repetitions in this task, but those repetitions were not boring because of these affordances of VR. So sense of presence, co-presence, mobility, customized space, and the avatars, which change each time, gave a kind of a novelty to their practice and facilitated contextualized, meaningful interaction. But there were some challenges. True authenticity was not achieved because of limited emotional connection with others in the VR space, as we found in the survey data, and lack of social cues in the avatars and the animated environment, like game-like environment they reported. And also, task goal and the task-based interaction needs to be maybe reconceptualized to reflect affordances of VR. So how do we evaluate or analyze those interaction with a space and the artifacts and the objects happening in the virtual space as a part of a task-based interaction? I think that's an important future direction. So I think concluding remark is a re-emphasis of what I talked about already, but these affordances of VR and the TBLT principles needs to be integrated more firmly. So VR side, they need to look at those characteristics of pedagogical tasks and apply them when they design VR tasks. And TBLT side, they can look at what's available as platforms of VR and as a place for task-based language learning and teaching. So this is all I have today, and thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you. First of all, Naoko, thank you for that talk. It was very, very interesting. I was wondering, I think one way to combine task interaction and the interaction in the VR space is to combine the goal of your task and maybe relate it to the environment. Have you done that in your Okay, right. So there weren't interactions where the students were actually commenting on the environment or working on that, or?
Right, yes. So we didn't really implement that as part of the task goal. So we created those environment and artifacts and everything according to the scenarios, and we looked at what university in Mexico looks like and things. But we didn't have that mindset when we are creating this space, how they would interact with the environment. So this data was a basketball court, and playing with balls was something, yeah, we saw at the end, and we are kind of surprised how, playful the participants are.
Because I can imagine you could also set a task goal, play basketball with one of your colleagues, and I don't know, things like that, I think could also be implemented or integrated into a task.
Right.
It would be very different to, just getting to know each other, but you would make use of the virtual reality space more, and the, movements and all of that.
Right, yeah.
I will focus on that in my presentation, just a little ad. And we actually analyzed how they interacted with the environment.
Okay, right, yeah.
Thank you, that was.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, God. I'm very bad at throwing. Okay, this is. Oh.
Thank you for that, a great talk. I had a quick question that I might have missed earlier. Were they only interacting with other classmates, or did they have opportunities of interacting with other people within that environment that were outside of the classroom?
So this setting, it was like a laboratory setting, and we are doing experiments. So we recruited the participants from different classes, and then we randomized and put them in a random space. But realistically, yes, anybody can actually come in. But we restricted the invitations to those people who are participating in the study.
Awesome, awesome. And just one quick follow-up. You were mentioning a limitation being the authenticity of the VR. I'm just wondering if, I personally, I kind of see that as a strength of it, and maybe not getting fully authentic. Keeping, recognizing that this is a VR world, I kind of worry if we go too far into the realism of it. And so just sort of thinking about that going forward in terms of maybe that's actually an advantage of keeping it animated, but just some thoughts. And so
I think that's a great point. And I think that relates to the participants' comment, like, reduced pressure to communicate. Right? So that was an animated sort of environment, and there were avatars and hiding behind avatars, so they were able to communicate more freely. So yeah, so it's not true authenticity, but helps them to develop these communication skills. So it's a great point. Yes, go ahead.
It seems to me that the outcome of the task was the little chart that they had to fill in.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't give us any data about it.
Yes, I'm still actually looking at that. Yes, so that task sheet and outcomes. Yes, yeah. So I didn't include that in the slides, but we are still analyzing that part of the data.
The other thing is that there was no linguistic outcome. The linguistic outcome was, but there was no non-linguistic outcome. It's only a linguistic outcome, apart from completing the chart, right? But, you know, if you go to a party, go somewhere and you want to get to know people, we probably have some reason, you know, we want to meet someone that we really like, a beautiful girl, handsome man, someone who I share same interests with, right? And it didn't seem to me that there was any other purpose than just talking to people.
We actually, so we did a little bit of orientation or task briefing session before each VR task. And yes, the task goal was to get to know people and take notes on what they like or what's the details, so they can contact them later or become friends later, kind of thing. Yes. But yeah, great question.
Yeah, thank you. You emphasized that it's necessary to differentiate between spatial presence or physical presence and social presence when you're asking them in their survey or in an interview what it was like, right? And in your definition of social presence, which you measured lower than spatial presence, you had emotion or emotional connection to the other speakers. That was a bit surprising to me, because I'm unsure whether emotional connection always entails social presence. Maybe you can elaborate on that a little bit. What made you make that choice to have emotion as an important factor there?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So the Makaransky's survey, so he differentiated those constructs of presence. And the physical presence, as defined, is the feeling of being a part of the environment, and the feeling like they are talking directly to the people in the environment. In contrast, social presence is like emotional connections. So you might be talking to somebody in the same physical place, but how close do you feel to the people? Or how do you feel connected with the people? So it's more like an emotional feeling part of connection is a social presence. Yeah. So it's a different from physical, and it's a social presence. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for the presentation. It's so engaging, so interesting, and I wish I were your student, like learning Spanish in that kind of virtual reality, like so exciting for me. However, I'm also a young teacher, teach English anyway, and I can see that's a lot of promising benefits using VR in the classroom. But I can see that it also needs a lot of preparation before I implement this kind of learning approach anyway. And would you please share how, and you also mentioned some challenges that you found during your study, and would you please share with us like how to minimize the challenges there, and particularly with dealing with the technical problem or technical issue that your students experiencing, like probably firstly the students quite engaged in the task or doing in performing the task, but when there are several technical issues, probably they will get frustrated and they think that, oh, this is not really enjoyable anymore. Like I just want to go to the traditional role play or something like that. And would you please share with us how to minimize these kind of challenges, especially with the technical issue? Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you for the great question. So this was my first VR study, and the technical aspect is always there. And so for teachers to use them, I think they need training and also how to use them and things. But this one, social VR app, it's something you can download directly, and there is no, and it's also they have like a ready-made space. You can just go in. So preparation-wise, I think it's not so demanding in a way. They have to create everything or create all the physical place. It's not that. So they can go into the already existing place. And so I think a teacher's job is to think about what kind of a tasks should be appropriate using those kind of space. Yeah. The students' motivation. So yes, so this study, we did 4 sessions of VR over 2 weeks, which is relatively short in terms of a period. So, and there is always this the initial sort of interest using VR, but the interest and the motivation may fade over time. So we didn't get to the point of the students' motivation fading because of this 2 weeks shorter period. But I think for the longer run, it needs to be integrated as part of the course requirement or coursework. So students have a reason to do this task multiple times over time. And because of this experimental nature, I didn't organize it in like a class activity or group activities. They share their outcomes after each session or anything. So that was kind of individual based, the task completion. So maybe sharing what they learned from other peers during the interaction after each VR task may help them to motivate and sustain their motivation for this task. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Oh.
I'm slightly losing my voice, but I would like to thank you, Naoko, for your great talk. Thanks so much. Before we all walk over, I would like to have your brief attention for something that happened past week. We had a couple of cancellations, and one of the cancellations is very close to my heart because a former student of us actually passed away. And I wanted to just ask for 1 minute of silence to remember people that we miss, people that we lose, but also people who have hard times right now. So please share with me this moment of silence. Thank you. And I hope we can still gather sweet memories, but also happy friendships as we're here. And thank you all for being here and making this a conference that is worth being here. Thanks.